Hello and welcome to The Box Score. I'm your host, Hannah Brewitt. Behind this mask, I am smiling very big because it's a new season, a new year, and I think I speak for all of us when I say that I won't miss 2020. On tonight's episode, you'll see some fresh and familiar faces, and we'll bring you up to date on all the latest happenings in the sports world. Stay with us. By nature, hockey is one of the most exciting sports. You've got flashy goals, big hits, literal fistfights if you're into that kind of thing. But unless you have a personal connection to the game and or live in New England, Canada, or Minnesota, chances are that hockey probably isn't your favorite sport. I'd even assume that a lot of our viewers fall into that I'll watch a game if it's on and there's nothing else to watch category. I mean, most of our box score cast falls into that category. But my question is why? I get the arguments against baseball. The games are too long, the pace is too slow, but hockey is the opposite of that. The average hockey game lasts about 2.5 hours. Any longer than that usually means the game is more exciting. Lots of fighting, penalties, overtime, maybe even a shootout. A common complaint is the lack of scoring, but that raises the stakes, right? Wouldn't you think the game is more exciting that way and it puts more on the line? If you're already a hockey fan, you already know what I'm talking about. I don't need to convince you why the game itself is worth watching. But I want to talk about those casual fans that I mentioned earlier. The NHL shouldn't be marketing to the established fan base. The diehards will watch the games no matter what. If the NHL wants to grow the game, they need to give these casual fans a reason to tune in. What the NHL needs is a personality, which I present Exhibit A, this guy. It's pretty sad that the face of a whole entire league isn't a player, and it's not even a person. The Philadelphia Flyers have marketed their mascot Gritty more than any team in the league has marketed a single player. And sure, he's easily recognizable as a giant creepy orange monster, but the Flyers have given Gritty a personality that provides the team with an element that most hockey teams are missing, a sense of humor. For example, when thinking about the biggest names in hockey right now, you've got Sidney Crosby, Austin Matthews, Alex Ovechkin, Connor McDavid, to name a few. But what do you know about these guys, other than that they're really good at hockey? Exactly, probably nothing. But what do we know about Gritty? Gritty likes to snowboard. Gritty's a model. Gritty's a prankster. According to one Twitter user, Gritty embodies hopes and dreams for a better America. And that might be a stretch, but my point is, why aren't there any NHL teams using the Gritty method with other players? And like I said, it's easier to give a personality to an oversized Muppet, but I find it hard to believe that there aren't interesting, funny, dynamic guys who have more to bring to the league than just their on-ice talents. And with this, I give you Exhibit B, Pasternak.
We were listening Barbie Girl.
Yes. This is a real hilarious clip of Pasta following his hat trick performance during the Bruins-Flyers outdoor game in Tahoe, a game which the Bruins showed up looking like this. We love this. We need this. This is the kind of stuff that makes people smile, that makes people repost and retweet and tag their friends, and makes them want to tune in to Sunday Night Hockey. And it seems silly, and for diehard fans, it probably seems superfluous. But the only way the NHL is going to reach its true potential is if it expands the fan base. And if over-the-top mascots, Barbie Girl jam sessions, and 90s-inspired jumpsuits are the way to do it, then so be it. When we come back from this break, Chris Consoli makes his box score debut alongside Jacqueline Galvin for Top 5. Don't move your seat.
All right, coming back in 10 seconds. Ready, camera one. Camera one, get a wide shot of the entire thing, and in 3, 2, 1, take it. Talent cue.
Welcome back to Emerson College. Emerson
Camera
trails
4, get a shot of the players coming across the court.
10 seconds left. Emerson trails by 1 point.
Camera 2, close on the person shooting.
Thanks, Joe. With 10 seconds left, Emerson
Camera 1, close up on number 33.
Thanks, Joe. 10 seconds left. Emerson's going
Follow the ball, follow the ball.
Welcome back. I've got to be honest, February is probably my least favorite month. We're past the fun part of winter around the holidays. Us New Englanders are all sick of having to clean snow off our cars and shovel our driveways, and we have quite a ways to go before things start to warm up. But the universal sign that spring is on the way is the sweet, sweet sounds of bats cracking and balls hitting gloves down in Florida and Arizona. MLB spring training, baby. This offseason, the hot stove did not disappoint with some blockbuster deals involving some of the hottest stars in baseball. Here to give you their top 5 players whose deals will have the most return on investment are box score seasoned vet Jacqueline Galvin and our rookie Chris Consoli.
Thanks, Hannah. So at my number 5, I have George Springer. Now, George Springer isn't necessarily, the youngest guy, and the Blue Jays didn't necessarily need to add him to their outfield, but he's a great leader that can make an impact on a young team.
Yeah, so for my number 5, I went with Francisco Lindor. I had a lot of deliberation. I almost went with Springer, but Francisco Lindor puts up a lot more numbers than Springer does. 4-time All-Star, 2-time Gold Glove winner, and he is a problem solver for the Mets because they need bats, big bats, and they need defense. He's going to give them the defensive security that they need, and he's going to bring a lot of electricity to Citi Field.
Yeah, so moving on to my number 4, I actually have Trevor Bauer. He definitely would have made a little bit higher up on my list had he signed with the Mets. But Cy Young winner from this year, signing with the Dodgers. It's definitely a ring chase, also an insane contract, but we will see how he adds to this rotation.
Yeah, when it comes to Trevor Bauer, I'm really not sold on him completely. I loved him last year. He brought a lot of fun stuff on and off the field. He's just an absolute personality. But historically, he's pretty average. Ever since he joined the league up until around 2018, he could not keep a tidy ERA. He had strikeouts there, but obviously we saw in 2020 he was electric. He had a 1.72 ERA, and he threw about 100 strikeouts, and I'm excited to see him back home in Los Angeles.
Yeah, well, staying in the same area, I have Blake Snell going to the Padres at my number 3. Former Cy Young winner, going to add some firepower to that rotation down in San Diego. They are already a contender team, but I think the addition of Blake Snell will really hit home for them.
Yeah, so for my number 3, I picked Yu Darvish and his catcher, Victor Caratini. Yu Darvish, we both know he's a really big talent. He came second to Trevor Bauer in the Cy Young, but when he was in Chicago, he was dealing with injuries and the trade, and then his notable 4.95 ERA in 8 games in 2018, which was pretty bad. But last year, he had his career best 2.01 ERA with 93 strikeouts, and like I said, finished second. And the best thing about the whole trade is that he has his personal catcher there with him so he can feel like home just in case things go wrong.
Yeah, that's certainly nice. Well, at my number 2, I have Nolan Arenado getting traded from the Rockies, going down to the Cardinals, and basically securing the NL Central for the Cardinals. This is a huge move, definitely something that we've come to expect. But the Rockies absolutely got fleeced in this deal, so not too great for them. But who do you have at your number 2?
Well, with Arenado, honestly, I was going to put him at 5, but I just don't think that the Cardinals have enough behind him, in my opinion. But for number 2, I had a sleeper pick. I picked Trevor May. 31-year-old righty signed a 2-year, $15.5 million deal, all guaranteed. That's the Uncle Stevie special for you right there. So yeah, that was my sleeper pick. He is a personality. He's going to be really good with the fans. Ever since joining the league, he had a Tommy John. He's been dealing with a couple problems, but his control has gotten better over the offseason and last season. His fastball's gotten even faster, and I'm really excited to see him in New York because he's going to problem solve for their bullpen, which has been really bad. Their last 4 seasons have been 4 of the 6 of their worst ever in history of the ERA for their bullpen, so I'm really hoping that he can turn things around in New York.
Yeah, well, keeping in New York, I have Francisco Lindor at my number 1. Move over Aaron Judge. There is a new king of New York, and his name is Francisco Lindor. I think that this is the person who will put this Mets offense over the edge. Yeah,
I agree with you. But, number 1, obviously, I had Fernando Tatis Jr., most exciting player in baseball, 2.77 average, 17 home runs last year, and I just need to note that he has not played a whole season worth of games yet. But 2019, He played 84 games, had an average of 317. He had a 696 on base plus slugging, 22 home runs, and he just signed one of the biggest deals, well, the longest deals in MLB history, and with a fat bag of money. So
Yeah.
there we go. There we
Yeah,
have it.
well, those are our top 5. Now head back to you, Hannah.
Thanks, guys. It's definitely going to be a very exciting season this year. I can't wait to see some baseball once again. Now, before we shift to our virtual portion of the show, let's hear from Michael Lagerwell in studio with our brand new, very appropriately named segment, Mic Drop. Mikey, take it away.
Thanks, Hannah. Almost every year, the NBA draft is headlined by an amazing player who spends 1 year in college as a formality. Zion Williamson, Ben Simmons, and this year, Cade Cunningham are all perfect examples of this. Because of the hype surrounding these players, 4-year college players are often overlooked. In the 2020 draft, Oregon's Peyton Pritchard and TCU's Desmond Bain were overlooked. Both are already playing over 20 minutes a game and showing they are key bench pieces on their respective teams. Yet, they were both picked within the last 5 picks of the first round. Why? Upside, or lack thereof. NBA teams love upside. My favorite example of this is Bruno Caboclo.
First of all, he's described as the Brazilian Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant.
Caboclo was picked 20th in the first round, despite being 2 years away from being 2 years away. He was picked ahead of Joe Harris, who spent all 4 years at Virginia. Harris, by the way, started 128 games, and the Cavaliers won 91 games during his 4-year tenure. What 4-year college players don't have in upside, they make up for with grit, experience, and that feeling of comfort you have when they have the ball in their hands as the shot clock winds down. Malcolm Brogdon, Devontae Graham, and Monte Morris epitomize this. During their college careers, every single year these 3 played, their teams made March Madness. Every single year. That kind of winning experience isn't highly valued when NBA draft time comes around, but it should be. Brogdon was a second-round pick who became Rookie of the Year and hasn't had a losing season in the NBA. Devontae Graham broke out last year, averaging 18 and adding 3.4 win shares to the Charlotte Hornets, about as much as Jaren Jackson Jr. Morris averages less than a turnover a game for his career while also having a 17% usage rate as a point guard. My point is, potential isn't everything. Sometimes winning experience can be just as valuable to a team. Or you can be Damian Lillard and have both. Back to you, Hannah.
Thanks, Michael, for that mic drop. I think I like this segment. I think we'll probably keep it. And before the break, I met up with, on Zoom, Brenna Shelton, Cooper Sherman, and Joey Dubois for some NFL offseason talk. Let's check it out.
Thank you guys so much for joining me. It's so good to see all of you without some masks on, even if it's from behind the computer screen, but I'll take what I can get. We are still a long ways away from the NFL season starting. We just had the Super Bowl. Tom Brady, of course, came out on top with the Bucs, but it's never too early to start talking about next year. So I just want to get your guys' thoughts on what you're thinking about these blockbuster deals that could be happening in this offseason. Joey, let's see.
Yeah, so the first guy that I want to talk about, Hannah, is Deshaun Watson. He's the guy that everyone's buzzing about in NFL circles right now. He's demanded a trade from the Houston Texans, an unprecedented situation as he's still under contract for a whole lot more money for a couple of more years. I'm looking at the New York Jets as the team that should go after him the hardest. I think we've seen them in perpetual mediocrity for pretty much all of our lifetimes at the very least. So for them to go out there and get a guy like Deshaun Watson, obviously they still have holes all over the roster, but plugging up that quarterback spot with the superstar, that's a huge step in the right direction. So I think they should give up that number 2 pick and whatever else Houston asked for Deshaun. What do you guys think?
Well, so what's interesting is obviously he's asking for this trade. He wants to get out of there. But I'm curious to see if he's willing to go to a team that's been showing such that's been so mediocre behind the ball. So if he's already stubborn enough to leave, I would think that he would want to go somewhere with a little more oomph to it, someone where he can be successful, especially too, I've never seen so many QBs ready to be a free agent and running around the different NFL teams. So I'd be interested to know if he's capable of going to somewhere like that and be okay with it, since it seems like his ego is keeping him out of Texas.
Well, that's almost the thing with Houston, I think makes it interesting though, because they've been somewhat competitive over the past couple of years. Obviously, this year
Right.
notwithstanding, but it's more the loyalty aspect of it and trading away DeAndre Hopkins and now letting JJ Watt go and all that kind of stuff that I think is really weighing on him. So maybe he sees New York as a place that would be loyal to him, regardless of how successful they be on the football field.
Well, you make a great point, Brenna. I think there is, when you get with these big name players, there is that question of not only what team will take them, but where do they want to go? And when you get to a certain caliber of a player, that definitely is something that you can use to your advantage. You have that kind of pull if you've already established yourself in the league. But let's talk about a younger guy, Cooper, Tua.
Yes. So Tua Tagovailoa has had some rumors that he is linked in a trade for the Texans for Deshaun Watson, possibly, and also he's been linked with a trade rumor with the Seahawks for Russell Wilson. And on CBS Sports List, he was the fourth most likely quarterback to be traded. It's a bit surprising since Tua is only in his first year, but he's already had a fairly rocky relationship with the Dolphins. He's been benched multiple times for Ryan Fitzpatrick in the games. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. He's obviously got some great potential. He's got great mobility as a quarterback, along with the other very mobile quarterbacks in the NFL today. And in the 5 games he started, he's rushed for 3 rushing touchdowns, and 2 of those rushing touchdowns against the Patriots. So that hurt a little bit, to be honest. But good to see that he's excelled there. And weaknesses for him, he's had a bit of an interception problem. He's thrown about half as many interceptions as he threw touchdowns this season, with throwing 5 interceptions to his 11 touchdowns, and overall just has a consistency problem. So I'm thinking if he was benched for Ryan Fitzpatrick, as I said before multiple times last season, that questions how much faith the Dolphins really have in Tua if they can't leave him out there as a starter for an entire game.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. And especially with a young player like Tua, potential is the biggest thing here, because he hasn't proven himself yet. He clearly has not earned the respect and the faith of the Dolphins, like you said. So if a team wants to make a gamble on him, it's going to be just that. It is going to be a gamble because he hasn't proven himself on a big stage like the NFL. And another guy who had failed to prove himself is Cam Newton. Brenna, this is the first time in my lifetime I've seen the Patriots be this bad, which is super frustrating. So what do you think about Cam Newton?
Well, it's no secret that he's out of his prime. He's turning 32. He's no longer the young cat. He's no longer winning MVPs. He's kind of struggling on the injury side and staying healthy and getting out there. So what's kind of in the works right now is thinking if Cam Newton could be a good fit at the 49ers. So obviously the 49ers didn't have a great record this season. They were 6-10. They only had 7 touchdowns all season. So Garoppolo is also planning on leaving. So if that little change could happen, the 49ers could take Newton, who's more of a dynamic player, instead of a pocket player that Garoppolo is more so, and try and get him running the ball and gaining more yardage. I think the issue is with Cam Newton is he hasn't found a system that fits for his play style. He is so dynamic and so specific that he has to be able to be on a team where he is allowed to run and he is allowed to scramble and get out of tough situations. And so far, the Patriots, as we know, with Tom Brady for so long, they're a pocket playing team. They like to throw, like to get down the field. Tom Brady is not a runner by any means. So I think what's going to happen with Cam Newton is he needs to go somewhere where he's able to show his truest talent, which is being able to get out of tough spots. And I think the 49ers could really use it coming off such a tough season.
Yeah, I mean, it's true what you said about Cam Newton being on the Patriots. It just was not a great fit because the Patriots are so systemic. They have their Belichick system that has worked for them for years. And when you have a player like Cam Newton, he's a bit of a wild card. He's a bit more creative than Tom Brady. I would argue that he physically, he moves a lot better than Tom Brady. It's no secret, Tom's getting up there. So, that's a great point. And it's interesting. 49ers, if that were to happen, could become like a little feeder system from the Patriots. You have Jimmy
Well,
G,
absolutely.
you have,
Well, that's the thing too, is so Newton has thrown less interceptions, fumbled less, and taken less sacks than Garoppolo since 2018. So he shows that he's able to move around and get out of those tough spots and not have those turnovers, but he's not throwing the same yardages. So what's kind of in the works right now and what's been talked about, the rumor is that Garoppolo could go to the Detroit Lions, which has had Matthew Stafford in the past, which is more of a throwing team. Newton could fill in at the 49ers and they could become more dynamic. And the Patriots, I'm not sure. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, well, we will definitely see. Thank you guys so much for joining me. It's great to get these little thoughts out there before we really start to hear about these big acquisitions, trades, free agent market that will be blowing up later this year. But again, thank you so much for joining me. I hope to see you guys in studio very soon.
Welcome back to the box score. Until recent years, no one in the sports world was talking about the national anthem. It was an unquestioned standard that the anthem would be played before games and players and fans alike would rise and remove their caps. But this isn't the same world it was when the tradition was popularized in the early 19th century. And ever since Colin Kaepernick took a knee during the Star-Spangled Banner, the tradition has become a controversy. Like any industry, the sports world is faced with the challenge of knowing what to hold as tradition and what to change with the times. In 2021, the question has even evolved past standing and kneeling. The question many are asking now is, should the anthem be played at all? Here to debate this topic for tonight's buzzer beater are Madison Roy with her box score debut and Sam DaCosta. Madison, you're up first.
Playing the Star-Spangled Banner at sporting events has become a controversial topic in the past decade. It was first played on May 15, 1862 in Brooklyn, New York for the opening of a new baseball field, then more memorably played before each game of the 1918 World Series. World War I was in full swing at this time, and it was played to salute the U.S. troops who were fighting in World War I. It became a tradition to play the Star-Spangled Banner at all American sporting events, since as a reminder to commemorate the men and women who put their lives on the line to give us the ability to live the way we live. I respect and hear the groups who feel victimized by the Star-Spangled Banner, and I support them in the way that they choose what to do during the traditional game, whether it's kneeling, linking arms, putting their fist in the air. I feel taking away the Star-Spangled Banner would be the equivalent of us forgetting about the men and women who protect us as Americans.
All right, Sam, you're up.
The national anthem is completely interwoven into the fabric of American courtesy. It is played at every sporting event in this country from high school to pro, and America expects just as much. But the romance of listening to the Star-Spangled Banner at sporting events is gone. Nobody's listening to the words anymore. Everybody is watching the athletes and their prepared gestures. Who's got their hand on their heart and who's taking a seat. And that's not to undermine the value of honoring the troops. We can honor the troops at any time. If we play the banner at sporting events, why don't we play it at movie theaters or concerts or restaurants? The national anthem is not the beacon of patriotism it once was, and sporting events have become a hostile venue to truly test the limits of the lyrics. it has become a polarizing source of division. Playing the anthem at sporting events seeks out to exploit, to weaponize, and to shame those who feel the anthem misrepresents them. It's time to retire this outdated tradition once and for all.
All right, we've got some valid points on both sides, but now we're going to open the floor up to debate. As you guys debate, our out-of-studio jury will cast their votes, and when you hear the buzzer, it means that all the votes have been cast. All right, the floor is open.
So one of the problems about the national anthem and why it's so controversial it's mostly exclusively an American tradition. You don't really see this in sports outside of America. You don't watch a Premier League game in England, a rugby game in New Zealand, or even a cricket game in India and see them playing their national anthem. You see it at events like the Olympics and the World Cup because that's a showcase of international patriotism and pride in your country. You're playing to be world champions. In America, you have games against the Buccaneers and Chiefs or the Bills and the Jets, and you have to honor America every time you do it. And it's become a polarizing source of division, and it's nothing more than to fuel hate in this country, less so actually honor America.
I don't think it's fueling hate. I think that it's more we're trying to open up the stage to honor the troops that are fighting every single day for our rights and our freedom, and we're doing it at one of the most popular piece of American culture, which is sporting events.
And I understand the value of honoring the troops, and that's really one of the fundamental reasons that we play the anthem at sporting events. But as I said in my opening statement, why can't we do that at other venues, and why are sporting events the venue to do it? When you go to a restaurant, you don't salute America every time that you get your food. You don't have to do it every time you watch Harry Styles at Madison Square Garden. Why do we have to do it when we're watching a game? And I know that sports are the ultimate metaphor for life, for patriotism, for America, but it's more so just become a platform to fuel what side are you on, because this issue unfortunately has become so black and white. Either you hate America or you think America is perfect and you hate anybody who thinks that America isn't perfect.
But when do you think is a good way or a good time to commemorate the troops? Like, when is a good time instead of sporting events to do that? Like, could you name off, should we be singing the national anthem at restaurants? I mean, or before a concert? Like, if you don't think, like, when else is a good time to do it?
If you're going to go into that route of when should we play it, I don't think we should play it at restaurants or concerts, because if we're doing that, then we're becoming North Korea, to be honest. We don't need to salute our country at all times. If you want to salute your country and you want to be proud of America and all the values that go with that, you can do that on your own time. You don't have to do it every time that you're with 80,000 people. Why do we have to indoctrinate people who live here thinking that America is so great when for some people America isn't so great? And it's not just because maybe they think America is awful the way it is and they just want to leave, but also it's a matter of America's not perfect the way it is, and kneeling during the anthem is a way of them showing it's not perfect.
And I agree with you on that. That we don't need to always. But what do you feel about it being played at just the Super Bowl or just the Stanley Cup Finals?
That's a conversation that we could have, but honestly, I don't think it should be played at all at sporting events.
Well, what would you say to all of the family members of military veterans who like to go to sporting events and have that sense of pride and stand up and be able to do that?
We can do that at other times. The Super Bowl isn't the end-all be-all, or sporting events isn't the end-all be-all time to play the anthem at sporting events. We can do that on our own time. We could do that in peace. Why do we have to do it when we have 80 million people watching on TV? You can do that independently. You can do that whenever you want, but not necessarily when the world is watching.
Okay, I understand that. That's a good point. I just think that it would be breaking tradition. It's become such a big thing in our culture, and as though it might not be the best thing, I think that it should stay just to have that sense of pride for our troops.
Well, guys, the votes are in. When we come back for the break, we'll hear each side's closing arguments, and you'll have one more chance to sway the jury, and we will find out who will be tonight's buzzer beater champion. You won't want to miss it. Welcome back to the box score. To round out this week's installment of Buzzer Beater, let's hear each side's closing arguments. Madison?
Sports are extremely popular in the United States. Many people come together to cheer on their teams and players that they love. As the cousin of 2 world veterans of Afghanistan and great-granddaughter of 2 World War II veterans, hearing the Star-Spangled Banner before I watch my favorite teams play gives me the opportunity to step back and honor those family members and all the men and women who fought with them. Nobody is forced to stand during the song. Individuals can participate as they please. But I think as long as there are people fighting to give us the opportunity to watch or attend the sporting event, then we should be honoring them by doing so before.
All right, Sam, you're up.
In America, sports are not a platform to showcase patriotism. The anthem has been molded into a weapon against those who feel it misrepresents them. This is the problem. As a nation, we're neglecting a core principle the United States was built on. Just because an athlete takes a knee, that doesn't mean they are disloyal or unpatriotic. It embodies true expression of freedom that the Star-Spangled Banner was written to inspire and to protect. Instead of listening to discouraged and disheartened Americans, the anthem has become merely a venue to shame those who do not conform to a senseless tradition. And this issue is not as black and white as it is made out to be. If you take a knee, that doesn't mean you hate the troops and hate America. If you hold your hand over your heart, that doesn't mean you think America is perfect just the way it is for all Americans either. If we really are the land of the free, it's time we stop silencing the brave who don't feel the same way. The Dallas Mavericks had it right. Turn the music off.
All right, guys, the votes have been finalized, and congrats to Sam for a well-earned buzzer-beater win and the first win of 2021. Now for our final segment of the night, we're going to hear from Sam one more time, but this time from the Hot Take Factory. Sam, what have you got for us?
When the coronavirus pandemic struck, the sports world shut down. Sports returned months later, and our favorite athletes are all back on the field as we push onward and try to cope with a generational pandemic. But athletes are human, just like you and me, and many have tested positive for COVID-19 over the last 12 months. Some walk away unscathed and return to the field without missing a beat. Others aren't so lucky. According to the CDC, you can continue to show symptoms of COVID after recovering from the virus, including fatigue, shortness of breath, and coughing. So just because an athlete is asymptomatic and they test negative for the virus doesn't mean they're in the clear. Just running up and down the court can be laboring for athletes returning just weeks after becoming infected with the coronavirus. Celtics forward Jason Tatum tested positive for COVID over a month ago, and he's still dealing with the after effects of the virus. It doesn't help that Tatum plays in the NBA, where they play games every 48 hours. In the NFL, Myles Garrett tested positive for the virus in November and was still grappling with the lingering effects going into the playoffs. Garrett was dealing with shortness of breath and getting choked up on his own coughing. He told the media that 3 weeks after being cleared to return to the field, he was still doing breathing treatments 4 times per day and was still not at 100%. Other players in the NFL were also diagnosed with heart and respiratory conditions tied to COVID-19 complications. I get it if you're a player. You want to be out there with your team and you want to win. But at what cost? In some cases, your body, your career, and your livelihood. To the athletes, please take care of yourselves. Forget the show must go on. Take an extended leave of absence if it means saving yourself in the long run. To the fans, athletes are not invincible. Let's begin treating them like they're human and prioritizing their health over their stats. After all, we're living in a pandemic.
Yeah, Sam, I mean, I just can't wait for the day when we don't have to talk about a pandemic anymore. It doesn't seem like it's coming soon, but one day we will never have to worry about wearing a mask, staying 6 feet away, and I just can't wait for that. But this is all the time we have for this episode of The Box Score. To keep up with Season 11, check us out on Facebook and Instagram at @theboxscore_EIV. Again, I'm Hannah Brewitt, and this has been The Box Score. Stay healthy, wear a mask, and we'll see you next time.